Good evening, everybody. This is Brendon and Baillod from the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group. Having a little technical difficulty tonight. If you, let's see if anybody's online and watching us. So far, we don't have anybody. If once people join, we'd like to get people to comment to let us know that they can see us. We're having a little trouble with the stream tonight. Give everybody a couple of minutes to join for our program this evening. Looks like we've got a few people coming in now. Just waiting for people to join. If you can hear me, go ahead and feel free to chat in the comments. I'd like to see that people are actually able to. Looks like we've got some people joining now. Hello, Bob.
Hello, Brendon. How are you today?
Good. It looks like we've got about 10 people in the stream so far. Just waiting. I'd like to encourage anybody who's on listening right now to chat. Put some notes in for us so we can see that you can hear us. Looks like we have 14 people, but no, I don't see any comments. Again, feel free if actually if you could message me, private message me too. It says starting soon. Still not seeing any chat. Is anybody trying to type anything in the chat?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can see each other, but I'm not confident that anybody can see us. Okay, well, some people can hear us. Let me see if they can see us. Can you see us? Okay, excellent. So I've got some people that say that they can hear us and see us. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate those of you who privately message me. Well, let's get rolling. I'm going to go ahead and share our screen really quickly, and we will get rolling. So, again, thank you, everybody. All right. Bob and I had a little technical difficulty tonight, just getting things set up. It was sort of a pain. All right. Well, again, welcome everybody to our new shipwreck reveal. Bob and I are really excited to talk to you tonight about this new find. We've had, shall I say, Bob, an unusual run of luck in the last 2 years with 3 discoveries. I think maybe what I would say about it is we're getting better at it. Does that sound right?
Yes, we're doing real well. I think we're getting our methods dialed in and our equipment. We're understanding our equipment better and better every time we go out. and it's producing good results.
And I think too, our research is also pretty good. We're good. We choose the right wrecks. So a little bit about us and our background. Those of you who are on the channel probably know both of us, but we've been working together for about 25 years looking for shipwrecks together. And Bob and I were involved in this very early in our lives. Like in our late teens, early 20s, we were two of the founding members of the Ghost Ships Festival, the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group. And many of you might know of my book, Fathoms Deep But Not Forgotten, Wisconsin's Lost Ships, or my work with the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Organization. We're a citizen science organization based in Wisconsin that gives the public opportunities to come out and explore shipwrecks using remote sensing technologies. And so we actually have a brand new side scan sonar and remote operated vehicle that we'll be purchasing to allow our members and our partners to explore shipwrecks. Bob, a little about yourself.
Oh, I've been a WUA member, probably over 20, maybe 25 years. Uh, Great organization. I used to scuba dive. I no longer dive, so I just do boating. I help out anybody involved with underwater archaeology where I can. And I also work with you where we go out and put our sonars in the water after doing all kinds of research. And we try and find new things to enhance the understanding of Wisconsin's underwater maritime history.
Very cool. And Bob's been a great wreck hunting partner. He really has added a lot in terms of his abilities with technology, and he'll be talking about that a little bit more. Well, this is the moment that I think you've all tuned in for. We're going to talk about what exactly it is that we found, and here it comes. Bob and I, as a result of a pretty deliberate search, found the remains of the steam tug John Evenson. We decided to look for the Evenson because she's in our top 10 list of vessels that we thought could be found. There are reasons why she hadn't been. And tonight we're going to talk to you about this vessel, why we chose this vessel to look for, why she's significant, why we really wanted to find her, and why people have failed to find her in the past. She's been searched for a lot. And then we'll talk about the work that's already been done by the state. As soon as we found her, we called the state up, and they've already done a photogrammetry model. And we only found this a week ago. And so we've had tremendous support from the Wisconsin Historical Society. And Bob will talk about that. And we'll talk about how we searched for and found this wreck. So without further ado, I give you the John Evenson. This vessel was built in 1884 at Milwaukee by John Evenson himself. And you're going to learn a lot more about Mr. Evenson tonight. She was built by him as a harbor work tug. And John Evenson was an interesting guy. He immigrated from Norway with his parents. His dad, Kristen Evenson, was a fairly prominent lake captain who sailed for 40 years out of Milwaukee on schooners. And young John grew up on the lakes. He worked first, the family moved to Port Washington in 1849. And John, when he got a little bit older, started working there as a commercial fisherman. And in about 1864, the family moved to Milwaukee. And right around that time, John's dad joined the Union Army and was a soldier in the Civil War. And when John was 16, he enlisted at Port Washington as a soldier in the Union Army. He didn't come back until 1864. When he got back, shortly after that, he became a tug captain. And eventually, he joined the U.S. Life Saving Service at Milwaukee. And while John was in Milwaukee, he became the captain of the Milwaukee U.S. Life Saving Station and was responsible for a number of fairly dramatic rescues of sailors, shipwrecks off Milwaukee. So John Evenson was a really well-known guy. He decided in 1884 to retire from the Life Saving Service because the life expectancy for the storm warriors wasn't very long, and he had just had his first child. And that's why he decided to build the tug John Evenson. He wanted to go into business as a tugboat captain. He knew that there was a shortage of tugboats in Milwaukee, and he felt like he could compete and make money. So in April of 1884, the John Evenson was on the stocks. It was nearly completed, and we get this nice article that they say 64, she's 54 feet, 14-foot beam, 7.5 feet of hold. They say she'll be supplied with a 15 by 17-foot engine. What they mean is inch. So she had a 15-inch steam cylinder with a 17-inch stroke, and a boiler of 5'8" by 11 feet. And he was going to run her in opposition to the regular tug lines. But there was an ominous event that happened right away. While being launched stern first, the John Evanson's new tug got stuck on the ways, and the tug Stark brothers had to be summoned to pull her into the water. That's a bad omen. If any of you maritime guys know about launches, when they get stuck, it means they're afraid to go into their intended element. So anyway, they finally got her done. They named her the John Evenson, and she was put in the water. She had a pretty uneventful early career. Evenson was very successful with her. He eventually bought the tug Kitty Smoke. We have a single known photo of the tug John Evenson. And it's interesting how we come by this. One of the things I do before we look for wrecks is I really research them before we find them. And I did Evanson's genealogy because I wanted to know who he was and what he was doing here and why he built this tug. So it turns out that John Evenson had three young children when he died. His daughter Mabel married this fellow named Frank Benash, and their son, Harold Benash, happened to have, we located them, that family, and they happened to have the only known photo of the John Evenson. So interesting bit of information. So she had an interesting career, and I'll tell you a little bit about what types of things she did. Primarily, she was a harbor tug. So she towed vessels in and out of the harbor during heavy weather or lack of wind, often rescued stranded vessels. I've got a lot of articles from her career. I must have 100 different articles from her career mentioning all of the things she was involved in. One of the more interesting things that you'll find is that she was involved in commercial fishing during the winter months. So when there wasn't work, they would take her out and break ice with her on days when they could, and they'd go fishing with her for lake trout and commercially. There's a couple articles about them doing that. So the John Evenson, unfortunately, was sold pretty early in her career. John Evenson only owned her for 3 years because in March of 1887, he died, leaving a wife and 3 small children. This is the article right here. He died of pneumonia. He was at one time in charge of the life-saving station. Really a sad thing. This is actually his will. And it goes into quite some detail about how he's disposing of his vessels. He left the tugs to his wife, and his wife had to sell them. This is the tug John Evenson being sold cheap as the executors of the state wished to dispose of all the property. 4 years of age, a new steel boiler, and new machinery, considered a first-class tug. And it was sold. The John Evenson was sold to the Laurie brothers, who owned a stone quarry up in Sturgeon Bay. She had they were going to use her primarily for towing stone scows, but she was in many different trades. We see, again, a lot of different things. She's carrying light cargoes. She's towing schooners through the Sturgeon Bay Ship Canal. And she actually had a little mishap. She burned at Manistee, Michigan. This is the wreck report from that fire. And she was towed to Sturgeon Bay and rebuilt. So she didn't have a real long career. She lasted until 1895. The end came for her after only 11 years of service, which is part of the reason we only have the one photo of her. She was owned by the Laurie brothers, John and Alexander Laurie. They both captained her on and off. She had some work done on her boiler, in Milwaukee in 1895. She was on her way back from Milwaukee. She was just north of Onapee, present-day Algoma, Wisconsin, when the big steamer I. Watson Stevenson spotted her and signaled to her to come out and help his consorts. He was carrying two schooner barges through the Sturgeon Bay Ship Canal because the weather was pretty rough. It was pretty windy. And so the Evenson came out and they were going to take a line from her, and they came across the Stevenson's bow. And as they did, the Stevenson struck her stern a glancing blow, and it spun her around in front of this big steamer. And the Evenson capsized and rolled underneath the keel of this steamer, spilling all five of her crew into the water. The men on the two schooner barges picked up all of the crew except for one, a fireman named Martin Boswell, who was working below the decks. Boswell, we don't know that was his name. They give a lot of phonetic variations. Seems like it may have been a French last name. They say Bozeau or something like that, Bozeeau. We can't find any record of him, but he was a young man, so we don't think he had any children. His body came ashore a month later at Foscoro, just inshore from where the wreck was. So this gets a little bit, the next thing I'm going to talk about gets a little bit to why this wreck was so difficult to find. There were many, many articles about this. I have about 30 different articles about this vessel's loss from many different papers. And one of the things that we note is that they all give different locations and different depths. And I don't mean just slightly different, I mean wildly different. It's very clear from reading the articles that the Lorries didn't want this vessel recovered. They wanted the insurance money. They were frequently giving deliberate misinformation to the media. But Bob and I happened to find this Customs House wreck report. We are doing a project with the Association for Great Lakes Maritime History where we located a previously unknown trove of about 8,000 Customs House wreck reports down in Chicago at the National Archives. And we found this, the actual wreck report in the handwriting of John Lorry himself for the loss. And he says that she was about 5 miles northeast of Onapee, Wisconsin. And he didn't have much reason to lie to these guys, and he gives a pretty good account of what happened. He talks about how fast the vessels were going. It's very detailed. So we put a lot of weight on this when we decided to look for this shipwreck. And this is part of the reason we decided to look for it, is that we found this wreck report, and it really added another data point that was very important to us in our decision to go after this wreck. So we're going to talk a little bit about the search. I'm going to have Bob talk mostly about it, but I'll talk a little bit about the beginning of it. Why did we want the Evenson? Part of the reason for us was that we have a database of every vessel ever, that's still missing on the Western Lakes. And we have them all graded 1 to 5 by, findability. And Evenson is in the top 20 or 30. And we constantly reevaluate them. And when we came across that wreck report, it really raised it up to a 5 for us. We felt that it could be found. And what we did is we plotted the main accounts onto Google Earth with a transparency overlay for depth. And we realized that most of them clustered in a particular area. Now, it may seem, there was a lot of accounts. Like here, there are 11 different accounts. 5 miles northeast of Onapee is what the wreck report said, but there are at least 5 articles that said she was in 300 feet of water. One said a little north of Onapee, a couple miles out. One said 6 miles north of Onapee and 80 feet of water. Another one 7 miles out, 4 miles from shore, 5 miles north of Onapee, 10 miles south of the canal and 2 miles from shore, 15 fathoms, 4 miles from shore, 80 feet of water off Foscoro Pier, 3 miles off Stony Creek, and 102 to 132 feet of water. Another said there was 36 feet of water over the wreck, which we think was maybe guesswork. And another said she was in 10 fathoms. So what do you do with all that, right? Bob and I narrowed it down to what we threw out the 300-foot ones, and we narrowed it down to what we thought was really probably the site. And the last thing I'll say before I let Bob take over is there had been a reward for this wreck's discovery. The Neptune's Dive Club had put out a wanted poster for her, I don't know, but 10, 15 years ago. They wanted this wreck found because they believed she had excellent potential as a dive site. which in fact she is. She does. She's a wonderful dive site. So, Bob, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the search, how we found it, and our equipment?
Thank you, Brendon. Yes, the evening before we got together and we spent probably an hour and a half talking very intensely about every one of these reports. We went over it. We came up with theories of why they were reported the way they did. We really spent a lot of time kind of vetting stuff out and trying to then take out of there what we thought was uh, not good information and not credible. Like you said earlier, the 300 foot, we casted that aside because they wanted the money, obviously, and they wanted to make it too deep to salvage. So that pushed us in closer to shore. And the next thing is we started working with that, then talking about that. And from that, we came up with this search grid. And the next morning, we got up early. We had fairly good weather, and we headed out in your boat, your 19-foot Starcraft. Once we got out to where the corner of our grid was, the depths did not really match what we were expecting. So we made some adjustments for that at the site, and we put our two sonars in the water, your Deep Vision Little Eye, oh, and also then your Wreck Sniffer Mark 1, but we were using my Garmin screen. And you were driving, and then I was sitting next to you down on the floor looking at the Garmin screen. And then the screen for yours was at the other end where the passenger would sit, just above there up on the dash. And we had started, we hadn't started our grid yet, but we were getting our.
Correcting. Yeah,
Pardon?
we were correcting the grid, right? We had decided we didn't like where the grid was, and we decided
Correct.
to move the grid closer to shore and further south. And so we were heading to the new starting coordinate,
Correct.
with the wind at our back so that we could get the towfish tuned in.
Right. And we were adjusting our towfish. And you remember I was having trouble with my screen, but it was still showing stuff, but it wasn't quite functioning right. And we later on had to do a reboot on that. Well, even with all that, we were underway for 3 or 4 minutes with the two towfish in the water.
Yeah.
And Brendon's driving, and I looked down, and for a moment, I saw, oh, you can see it there in one of your photos. I saw that image, and you can see in the shadow, there's a 90-degree angle and another 90-degree angle. I mean, I just screamed out, boiler. There's a boiler down there. And then below that image, you can see some other stuff, which I caught a glimpse of.
Condenser on it too. I mean, that's clearly a condenser on top of it.
Yes, and then below it, there's just like, it looks like some rocks in that, but it's kind of rectangular. I saw that too, and this is moving on the screen. And you immediately jumped over and you looked at your Deep Vision Little Eye screen, and you said, "Yeah, that's a boiler." And we just couldn't believe it. We actually hadn't even started our search. We were just getting the equipment up and going. I mean, this is crazy. So we made 6 more passes on it. And I'm going to go into why this wasn't found before. I think the old timers had gone over this many times. Dick Boyd was out there for years looking for it, that I know of him for sure, and other people. And when we did the next, or maybe it was the next 5 passes, yeah, the next 5, it looked like a rock because we were coming in on the end of the boiler and at different angles. And it really didn't look like a boiler at that point. But then when we did the 7th pass, it was a boiler for sure. And that was just unbelievable. So we had pretty good equipment here, and we were able to catch that on the first pass at just the right angle, and where we could see that condenser and that those 90-degree angles in the shadow. That we spent time at that site until we got the images we really thought we needed to move forward with this. At that point, then we went into the next phase, which was we anchored our boat upwind of this thing, and we put in our little Gladius ROV. And there's a nice photo of it. And down we went with that thing, and we confirmed within minutes that we were on a shipwreck. We looked at this, and sure enough, we were 99.9% sure it was the Evenson. and there's the propeller. We could see all this. And this also shows why this wasn't found before. The evening before and that morning, we had discussed that we were really looking for a boiler. This thing had been hit by a large steamer going 10 miles an hour and was rolled and forced under that steamer and dragged along the keel as it probably sank. So we knew that the only thing we could probably find for sure was the boiler. The hull was obviously damaged through this event. On that bottom, it's got a cobble bottom. It's not sand really, and it's not clay or anything. So the only thing that's left at this site is the engine, and you can see the ribs under the keel there, the keel, the propeller, and the boiler, and then some small pieces of the hull that were held down by this heavy equipment. Pretty much, that's the skag and support for the propeller then, a very strong part of the vessel, and the propeller is holding that down. So
It's a pretty piece of rudder too.
yes, the rudder's there too, held down by that piece of stern. You can see it's bent up holding that rudder. So we really had planned this well. We were looking for a boiler. This is a very active, dynamic site with as far as waves and wind and anything that wasn't really held down by something heavy. Over the 100 and some years it was down there is just blasted out of there. And yeah, there's the boiler on the left. It's just a beautiful sight. I mean, you can see that boiler, then the keel, then the engine, then the propeller. I mean, it's really a fillet of tugboat.
I would add to it too. We're showing an excellent photogrammetry model that was created by Tamara Thompson and Zach Whitrock from the State Historical Society. We called them, and they were there the next morning to survey this wreck. Talk about immediate response. And they did a wonderful job. This is a great photogrammetry model. And one of the things that I think is most valuable about this is it's a disarticulated tugboat where you get to see the machinery. So you get to see this wonderful 1884 A-frame single cylinder steam engine. And this is a very early one. You can see the steam head here. This is where the cylinder is. You can see her crankshaft here, her connecting rod coming down. You can see her flywheel and the whole drivetrain going back to the propeller. The steam piping here that would have taken the steam from her boiler and her condenser back are still there. You can look into her firebox, probably under here somewhere. It may even be a gauge panel. It's a really interesting site in terms of being able to dive in and see what the tug was like. So often, if you see one that's intact, it's a boat. You don't get to see the machinery. But a wonderful photogrammetry model that'll be fun to look at in a 3D headset. Bob?
Yes, and also when Tammy and Zach were down there diving, we were able to follow the entire process with the ROV and watch them. I mean, it was fascinating. And of course, we gathered our own photos. And this really shows the scale, that the size of that engine. That's Tammy right there. And she's doing the measuring after Zach had done the photogrammetry. And they really worked great as a team. And they were here within 24 hours of this thing being found. So it's I think, a real good discovery. And I think the technology was just right. And we got a little lucky that day. And like I said earlier, we really had not even started our search yet. We just had put the fish in the water and we're kind of getting things dialed in. Talk about lucky, which kind of leads me to believe that these old timers had gone over this many times and just saw it as a rock. There were rocks around this wreck, sizable rocks. So this is one that easily could have been passed over.
Yeah, and I'll just say here's where we first put the fish in the water, and we turned away from our grid, and we're running essentially southwest of our grid with the wind at our back, because the wind was coming out of the northeast.
Yes.
And right in the middle here is where we picked up the boiler, and we were going to start the new grid down here. And so it was a weird thing. Like, we got out there on site, we realized that we weren't really where we wanted to be. and we were adjusting the grid in real time, and we ran it over like in 3 minutes. It was just unbelievable. We had 3 days planned for this search, and then after we found it in like 5 minutes, we didn't know what to do with the rest of the weekend because we had provisions for 3 days. We had, gas in the boat for 3 days. I did have a talk I was giving that Saturday up in Algoma on the other wrecks we found, but yeah, so it was phenomenal. It's almost spooky, almost as if the thing wanted to be found, I guess. Sort of strange. We couldn't believe it. We were kind of pinching ourselves because the previous two wrecks were hard to find. The Trinidad took us 2 days. The Muir, which had a smaller grid, took us 5 hours, I think, to find. To go out
Yes.
there for this one and to just fall on it, I wouldn't call it accidentally because we had a pretty good idea, but it was really quite something.
Yeah, I think about those old timers that were out there with the equipment they had, and they were probably looking for a hull, and uh, they were just probably never going to find this with that older equipment. It just wasn't going to work unless they sent a diver down on every large rock they saw. That was the only way they probably could have done this.
Yeah. So, what's the future of this wreck? In talking with Tamara Thompson from the State Historical Society, one of the things that's in the future plans for this wreck is a nomination to the National Register of Historic Places. We probably won't get to it right away. There are kind of a lot of other sites ahead of it, but we'll eventually get to it. Bob and I are going to have a national press release tomorrow about the find, and I want to talk about why we do that. Bob and I, we're not like chest thumping, wreck hunters. In fact, we don't even like the term wreck hunter. We consider ourselves maritime historians. We don't dive these things anymore, neither of us. We do it primarily to draw attention to the historical importance of the site and to educate the public about maritime history, and particularly to help the local community appreciate the site and to adopt it as part of their community's history, right? And so when you find a new wreck like this, it's a rare opportunity. You have sort of a platform to do that education, for a very short period, because it goes away as soon as as soon as the announcement's over and it was okay, yeah, that one was found. But in that brief period after you find it, you do have an opportunity that you can really seize to do not just local history education, but nationally. A couple of our releases have gotten national media attention, and it really does help people understand the importance of Great Lakes vessels in building, America during the Industrial Revolution, and it helps reconnect people with this maritime past that's mostly lost. Right, our waterfronts are now mostly regentrified with condos and things, and these shipwrecks are really the only tangible links in many instances to the maritime past of a lot of these cities that really were built as port cities. Right, the only reason they were there is because they were on the Great Lakes. So we're going to continue to tell that story. We will be releasing the numbers for the Evenson at the Ghost Ships Festival. Not the Muir. We're not going to release the Muir's location until it's listed on the National Register later in 2025. And we will, I believe we're going to release the numbers for the Trinidad at the Ghost Ships Festival as well. So that's kind of what's in the works for this wreck. We really hope this becomes a popular dive site. We would like to see Algoma get diver visitation. They have 4 excellent shipwrecks up there now for all levels of skill. They've got the Daniel Lyons, which was found in 1985 and in 100 feet of water. And then, of course, the Trinidad's a nice technical dive that you can swim over comfortably at like 250, 255. And then you have these nice 250-footer, 50-foot deep wrecks, the Muir and the Evenson.
Yes.
So that is our new find. We're pretty excited about it. We're excited to tell the story to a larger audience and to make this wreck available to wreck divers in Wisconsin. Bob, any last-minute thoughts?
I'm very jealous. I wish I could be one of the divers diving this next year. This is, I've always liked tugboats, and this falls right in my wheelhouse. But we have a lot of pictures from the ROV, so I can do with that. And just looking forward to telling the story about this and moving on to the next project.
Yeah, I could probably have dived it, but when we go wreck hunting, we don't bring dive gear. And with the ROV, it really takes away the need. We can have that thing down there looking at it in 5 minutes. And we don't have to get wet. So our future plans, Bob and I have a couple of different projects with different people and different organizations to do additional wreck searches. So I think we're done for this season for the most part. However, we are working on a few other sites with people. So it is likely that you've not heard the last of these, but we'll see if we get lucky again. I think we're done in Algoma. I don't know of too many other sites in the Algoma area. And I just want to make it clear, we didn't choose to search in Algoma for 3 wrecks in a row. It just sort of happened that way. We went up there. The Evenson was next up, I guess, on our list. Would you say that's right, Bob?
The logistics were working out also, so just a lot of little things came together to make it
Yeah.
happen.
So we're about to do our press release this evening. It'll go out to local news media, regional news media, and we'll be posting it on all of the social media sites. So if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to contact me directly or Bob, and we're going to be happy to chat with you about it. The Sketchfab model is up for the site as well. We will be posting that and sharing it in our press release. So I think we have everything ready to go. And again, we want to thank you all for joining us tonight for this live reveal. And we look forward to sharing the John Evenson with you as after our press release. Bob, any parting thoughts?
Just thank you to Tammy Thompson and Zach Whitrock for uh, getting there the very next day and just being part of the story and pulling this whole thing together so quickly at the end of the season here. That was just fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, they've been great partners, and Tammy in particular has provided us with a lot of guidance on how to proceed with these things, because we don't release these until they're well documented and either on the National Register, or if they have portable artifacts, we make sure that they're listed first. So that's part of the reason why we keep these. We might say, oh, we found something, but we don't necessarily release what it is or where for a while. It's not because we just want to gin up excitement, although that is a nice byproduct. It's because we want to wait until the state has a chance to look at it and decide what's best for the site. So, all right. Well, thank you again, everybody. Have a good evening, and feel free to ping either Bob or I if you have any questions. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.